To start off, I'm not a believer in anything paranormal, magical, voodoo-y, hoodoo-y, none of that stuff. The extent of my creepy ghost-like or urban legend experience until now had been through my friends, and most of them chalked it up to the usual. It was a cougar or fox scream, not a woman's. The wind did that. It was just a messed up homeless guy stalking me, and then left it at that. But I cannot logically explain to myself what I just witnessed in any terms other than saying it was unnatural at best or terrifyingly unworldly at worst. So this all happened just a few hours ago when I decided to do something different after work and take a hike by this little park my shop is by. I'm a mechanic. It's something my wife loves to do, and I decided I'd take the same trails she likes to go on. Now, the thing about the park is that it's basically just an office, some roads to look at scenery, and a place to fish and dock boats in the lake nearby. But after that, it's mostly trails. The trails only go out into the woods about 10 miles, and after that, it's about 1,000 acres of no man's land woods and blind cliffs owned by the state. People get lost, go missing, and die all the time because the dumbasses think they can rough it, and my wife has had her own stories of going off trail for a second and getting instantly turned around. In my college days, I used to do the same, but not anymore since I've had my fair share of getting scared witless after getting lost in places like that. It's by the grace of God I could always find my way back, but it's never a wise thing to do, even if you are confident in your own navigation skills. I think you get the picture of the place I was in. When I get there and I'm parked, I decided that I'd take one of the relatively shorter routes, 2-mile round trail, since it had been a while since I hiked the trails and didn't have any gear on me, plus it would get dark soon. I grabbed a map from the office right by the start of all the trails on the off chance I got lost or something, and thank God I did. I was pretty confident that getting lost wouldn't be that big of a deal anyway, since one of the longer trails, also a round trail, about 10 miles around made for camping on, went all the way around the parking lot, and my trail with my car basically being the dead center of the thing. When in doubt, I could just walk in any one direction and find it and get back home. So, starting off the hike, I wasn't worried. Just ready to get some walking in and then brag to my wife how I finally went out to her favorite place. I'd say I was even excited. The weather was amazing. The wind was at just the right speed, and I would have something to talk about. I'd say I was about a quarter mile in before things got a little weird. It wasn't that there was anything visibly off or anything, just that I started to feel uncomfortable, kind of like a nagging feeling in the back of my mind saying, "You should probably leave." I had already started and really didn't feel like turning around, so I kept going, looking at wildlife, enjoying the view when I could, and generally taking it slow. But that feeling never did go away. It was at the halfway point at what my map said was the crest of the trail that feeling got overwhelming. It was suffocating, like my whole body just wanted to up and run out of the perfectly fine looking trail. But I had already come so far, and there was no use in turning around since I was at the halfway point. I thought maybe I was just getting freaked out since I hadn't done it in a while, or maybe I was just having a panic attack from all the stress I'd been under the past few days. So I decided to sit down and take a breather to calm myself down. It didn't. Around 5 minutes into me flipping through my phone and reading some random Reddit stories, I noticed how damn quiet the woods had gotten. The air was dead. There was literally nothing. You ever heard the phrase, "silence can be deafening"? Well, in that moment, it was so quiet. I swear to God, I could hear the blood flowing in my head. It hurt it was so silent, and it unnerved me to no end. So, I did what any husband does. I called my wife for guidance. The conversation went something like this, at full speaker volume since I was so desperate to clear the air. "David? What's going on?" She knew something was up because I rarely ever called, even for emergencies. "Hey, don't worry, I'm gonna be late because I decided I was gonna hike the 2-mile loop today, but I had a question for you. What does it mean when the woods get, suddenly quiet?" She went silent for a bit, freaking me out more. "Where are you on the trail? How far in?" "About a mile. Why?" "I want you to get up, grab a big rock or a sharp, long stick or something, and finish the trail as quickly as possible. But don't run. It's quiet because there's a predator around. Maybe a bear or a cougar. Something big at least. I don't want to freak you out, but I want you to know that it probably already knows you're there, and if it's a cougar, it's probably been following you. Make it know you're there, and don't run. Stand your ground. I'll drive up the trail and meet you when you get out." And she hung up before I could probably freak the hell out. Rather than puking up my anxiety or running as fast as I could, I got a stick, broke some of it off so it'd be sharp, and sent a quick "I love you, thanks" text to my wife. Our house is close, so I knew she'd be there in about 15 or so minutes, but it didn't calm me down, not at all. For the next half hour, I had slowed down to about a crawl as I looked around for whatever could be near me. All the while, the woods were still quiet. At that point, I was so anxious, I wanted to barf, and I might have, if I wasn't so paranoid that closing my eyes for just a second would alert whatever was making the woods so quiet to attack. So, I just went on, looking over my shoulder every few seconds and stopping to strain my ears to hear if there was anything walking around me. For a long stretch of time, there wasn't. Still no sound, still no wildlife, still nothing. Just my heart racing. But as I went on the trail into some of the thicker parts of the woods, I began to notice my footsteps seemed to echo, ever so slightly. It was hardly noticeable, and had I not been so on alert, I would never even registered it. But once I heard it, it was deafening. When I stopped and checked behind me though, there was nothing. At first, I thought I'd just gotten so worked up I was hearing things, that the quiet was messing with my head and my brain got bored. So I tried to ignore it. But after a while, I just couldn't. It was so unnerving that I started to play with it. I quickened my pace ever so slightly. Stop, go nearly into a full sprint, and every time, an almost perfectly in-time replica would follow. I hated every second of it. It felt so unnatural that I could feel my body begging me to just book it. But I couldn't. If it really was a cougar, I'd be dead. So I tried one last effort to really see if it was in my head or not. I took a few normal steps, then acted like I was about to put my foot down before I stopped just above the leaves. Crunch. I had never gone so still in my life. I couldn't breathe as the sound of that extra footstep just echoed in my brain. And somehow, I knew, just damn knew, deep down, despite never being involved with this type of stuff, that whatever it was behind me wasn't natural. For the longest time, I couldn't move, and sure as hell didn't want to look behind me. My 5'3" looking ass wouldn't last a second, and I really didn't want to mess my already pea-filled overalls. After what must have only been a few seconds now that I think about it, I started walking again, faster this time. The echo admittedly didn't return, but I still had a suffocating sense of dread and terror pumping in my veins. I only had a quarter mile left to go, and I was sure as hell ready to get the hell out of that place. I wasn't any less scared than I was, but at least I still had the solace of being in one piece and being one step closer to my wife, and probably our shotgun if she had the sense to grab it, and she probably did. I thought it was over at this point, and that it was just going to be a moment of me having a freak out moment and laugh about it tomorrow, and after a few minutes of being footstep free and hearing my wife call my name a little ways up the trail, the relief that washed over me had me thinking just that. I'd been walking slower than usual, so I wasn't shocked that she had come to meet me on the trail. From the exit, it would have only been a 15-minute walk at a breakneck pace, and she was the type of person to meet you if you were freaked out, even in the middle of nowhere. What else was I supposed to suspect? So I keep on walking and hear her call me again. I reply with some, "I'm coming, I'm here, I'm safe" lines and keep on following the trail. There was nothing that threw me off, not a single thing. So I just kept going. The only thing that I detected was off was that no matter how much further I got, her voice didn't get any louder. It was odd, but I thought maybe she was trying to lead me to the exit, or thought I went off trail or something, and when I heard her voice subtly switch from in front of me to my left, those suspicions were answered. At least, they were for a split second. I was bleary from all that fear. I knew that. And when I remembered who the hell was calling for me, I knew for a goddamn fact that that woman had learned a lesson on getting lost in the woods. The last time had been nearly over a year ago, and she was lost for nearly a whole night. She didn't go hiking for a few months after that, she was so shaken up, and had to go to therapy for weeks because of it. She loved me, but she wouldn't go into the woods for me. Not again. But who the hell else could it be? So, for a second, I just listened as a voice subtly got closer, still calling my name. The more I listened, the odder I noticed that it was. It was the same. Every single time she said it, it sounded exactly the same. Same intonation, same speed, everything. No other words, but my name. None. And it kept getting closer. "Hon, is that you? Answer me, yes or no?" I don't know why I asked that. Honestly, I don't. But I'm sure as hell glad I did. For about a second, it stopped. Back to that silence, and I thought my heart was going to implode from the anticipation. Jesus, it nearly did, when I heard the most blood-curdling, bloody murder pain scream I'd ever heard from a woman's mouth. It just kept going and going and going. There was only a stop, like for a gasp of air, but the sound never weakened or broke like anyone in pain would. It was just an ongoing sound that paused for a second, then kept going. And in my panic, I booked it as fast as I possibly could because of all the things I knew and didn't. That thing wasn't my wife. Running at the speed I was, and in the hurry, I didn't even notice when I went off trail since they weren't well cleared during this time of year, and I didn't know I was lost until I knew I should have been out of the woods. But I couldn't stop. I didn't want to turn around and run back because that thing was still screeching. and it still wasn't getting any farther or closer to me. I could see it from the tears in my eyes as I just kept running, bolting until my legs were nearly about to collapse, and my lungs felt like they were being stabbed. I hadn't even been gone for a full 5 minutes before I had to stop, with that screeching still behind me. There was nothing I could do. I was in the middle of a gigantic forest. I had dropped my stick, and something that wasn't a cougar or a bear or a fox was following me. That 10-mile loop was at least a mile or two away from where I had ran, and if that was my only bet, it would be dark by the time I found it. It didn't matter since I was out of breath. All I could do was hide. Since the trails themselves could get pretty craggy when they weren't all forest, I raced to find myself some rocks and ended up squeezing myself between them. Thinking back now, it was the stupidest thing I could have chosen to do, but in that moment, it was the best I had. I sat between those rocks, holding my breath, sweating up an anxious, smelly storm as my bug eyes looked around what little I could see from my hiding spot. The screaming never did stop, but the footsteps returned. It was a very quiet, very subtle crunch, so predatory in nature, I wanted to cry. Probably would have, won't lie. But I think the worst part of it all, the part that may never leave my mind, is that as that thing's footsteps moved right behind the back of my rock that totally covered me, that screaming never got any louder. Even when it was right behind me, the screaming stayed the exact same volume until, out of nowhere, it just stopped on a dime. I heard the footsteps explore around for a long, long time, but eventually, they too went far enough away that I couldn't hear them. I didn't dare leave my hiding spot for what I determined was about an hour, trembling and light-headed as it got darker. When I finally pried myself from between the rocky cheeks that saved my ass, for that moment, I walked as quietly as I could towards the 10-mile loop, hoping to find it and some campers before dark. I made it to the trail just after dark after exploring for 2 hours and found a ranger's cabin just a little ways from where I started on it. She had been just getting the missing persons call from my wife when I knocked on a door, pale as a ghost, scared as hell. Before she took me back, which was a thankfully short drive on her four-wheeler, I asked if I could use a toilet and threw up more violently than I had in my whole life. She didn't ask me what happened, just took me back, and on the whole way from the cabin to parking lot, holding on to her a lot more tightly than someone with dignity should, I had the distinct feeling of being watched. My wife nearly sobbed when she saw me. 5 hours later to the parking lot than I was meant to be. The cops and the ranger checked me over and determined that, though shaken up, I was fine. Her and I left, and she pulled into the nearby gas station to calm herself down as she looked me over, utterly silent. "I thought you had gotten attacked by a cougar or something, David." All I could say was, "It wasn't a cougar." The silence that she gave me then, the look on her face as she just stared at me, will never leave my mind before she said something freakier than I could manage to describe what I had just been through. I know. I just got home an hour ago, and I haven't spoken to my wife about it any further. We've just been quiet. I still have sticks in my hair, but I'm terrified to be alone. What the hell did I just witness?